Hey guys, welcome to Channel Surfing, the ign podcast. Let's do an update here. I'm still coughing.
Yes.
So,
we don't think he's going to be dead this week.
not this week. It'll happen while I'm about to go on a vacation to Scotland and Ireland.
Yeah.
So I'll just drop dead somewhere in Scotland.
But you'll have been in Scotland.
And it'll be so memorable, right?
Yeah.
Like, did you hear Eric died in Scotland?
Where are you going in Scotland? This is probably a conversation we should have when we're not podcasting.
Edinburgh.
It's so beautiful there.
Yeah, and some other places. My wife's the travel agent. Like she itinerarizes. I just go, that sounds awesome.
True, like just so that you guys know, we'll get on topic soon enough. But Eric has the most amazing wife. Like she's so rad in every way.
I'll back that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's but sure. I'm still coughing, and so we'll see if I'm still coughing on my trip. But what can you do?
Aww.
But
She'll be coughing in Edinburgh.
Exactly. It'll be lovely. It'll be green. But we were talking about the idea. Yeah, the idea of doing a second podcast this week to bank while I'm gone. That's not going to happen.
That was a crazy
that was
idea.
ridiculous. What kind of crack cocaine were those people on? So yeah, well, and this might even be a really short podcast. So yeah, what we're saying is we're going to continue to underdeliver. Yes. But yeah, let's start out. I'll bring the room down immediately.
Oh, no.
I wanted to mention Leonard Nimoy, and I actually have. Did we do a Keeping It Real? We might not have done a Keeping It Real the past week anyway.
No.
Okay, well, actually, I mean, it's good in so much as I guess we haven't really talked about this on a podcast. Just it's one of those. You don't know. Like, this is a weird thing with celebrity deaths. Like, you kind of don't know how you're going to react personally.
Right.
And what's going to get you and what's going to have an impact.
Sure.
Until it happens. But Nimoy was one of those ones where it was like, I felt it, you know?
Yeah, it's weird because I felt Robin Williams horribly because that was so tragic, you know, in every way. And Leonard Nimoy, I felt very much, but it also felt kind of beautiful in the way of he had a really great life.
Yeah.
He had a really great life. He was a very positive person.
Very.
You know, he was a very, by the looks of it, very happy person. And so you just feel happy for him that that was his experience and he lived a good long while. And then we hope he passed relatively peacefully.
Right.
There's no better way to do it. So it's sad, like it's a big loss, I think, in entertainment and in the world, but there's no better way to do life than that.
No, yeah. And it wasn't like, it wasn't a tragic end or whatnot. But I will say, I mean, it really just speaks to, I think the emotion a lot of people felt was just, it speaks to his career, what he'd accomplished, and how iconic, he really was. And it's funny, you ask people like, oh, are you Marvel or DC, and are you Star Wars or Star Trek? Which is always a funny question because, of course, you can love both, and plenty of people do, but there is always the one you lean towards, right?
Sure.
And I'm a Marvel guy, and I'm a Star Wars guy, but of course I still love Star Trek, and I think Wrath of Khan, there's other ones too. Wrath of Khan is just an amazing movie. And so, it's like he's just been part of everyone's life. Like him as Spock, the image of him as Spock is just completely part of pop culture.
It is a part of, and then he just became such a living icon, so like even when he showed up on Fringe, I mean, he brought so much with him, like you don't have to do much really, but just be Leonard Nimoy at that point to be like, oh man, this is a force to be reckoned with. Yeah. He wasn't on the show as much as I would have liked. Sure. But it was lovely to see him there. My brother and I used to watch the original Star Trek on reruns together, and that definitely was a big part of my childhood. Yeah. I lean more towards Star Wars. Right. But you can. The heart is big enough. Right. To love multiple things. Oh yeah.
I as a kid here in LA, Star Trek would play on Sunday afternoons, I think Channel 13. And I'd watch it every week.
Played late at night in New York. I don't remember. Well, it felt late. Maybe it really wasn't that late. We were just young.
It was like 7:30.
It was like 7:30 p.m.
Staying up late. I'm glad you mentioned the thing on Fringe though, because that is true. I remember when it was announced he was playing William Bell, because William Bell had kind of been built as like this. He was already an important character in the history, and then you heard Leonard Nimoy was playing him,
and you're like,
yes, yeah, of course, and that's the kind of thing the gravitas he brought to it in that world especially.
But in the world of sci-fi, it was like such a joy to see him. Yeah. And I loved Fringe so much that it was like, Fringe got Nimoy, you know?
Mm-hmm. No, same here, same here. And I also have to mention Transformers the movie, as in 1986's
the
Transformers the movie.
The animated.
Yeah, which has one of the strangest casts ever, with Jed Nelson and Robert Stack and Orson Welles.
There's nothing strange about that.
And Leonard Nimoy as Galvatron. I bet they didn't record together, but let's just imagine they did.
Which is a much darker, I mean, for everybody who likes the darker, grittier version, that animated version of the Transformers is far grittier than anything that we've seen in live action.
That was
a
childhood trauma. Yeah. You know? Well, it was because of the medium, because it was animated, because it's like you just don't do that, you know. You just don't pretty much.
We won't spoil anything.
Well, I think I'm saying statute of limitations. I'm just saying that a lot of the Transformers don't make it out of that movie.
No, they don't.
And it was behind the scenes. It was pretty much driven by mercenary, like, new toys, get rid of the old ones. Which kind of even makes it worse and better that they were messing with a generation of children.
Just like, for marketing
I just want to be in that meeting where they're like, well, we're bringing in these new characters and we kind of wanted them to take over the show.
So we'll have to kill.
So let's just freaking kill them all.
I was going to say it was a bloodbath, but I guess it was an oil bath.
But it also especially was funny because, wow, we're going down this tangent here. It was also funny because Transformers...
It was the red wedding of Transformers.
It was. Because Transformers in very, like, 80s cartoon, I keep coughing, sorry, in 80s cartoon fashion, the villains were completely ineffectual.
Yeah.
And every week Megatron would be like, here's my new plan. Guess what? You're going to get your
totally
butt kicked.
not gonna work.
And at the end of the episode, you're going to go, retreat, retreat. So the fact that Transformers movie is like, oh, Megatron showed up. Oh, I guess you got a new plan. And then he's just like, bam,
bam, bam, bam.
It's like, pop, you know? Like, just take it out.
It's actually kind of like nice for Megatron to get a moment of triumph, and that's where he got it. Yeah, wasn't there a reference about G.I. Joe's? It was on Community where they referenced how on G.I. Joe, like was it on Community where...
Did they reference the infamous the Duke didn't die thing?
And how ineffectual the villains really are.
Oh, yeah. They definitely referenced that. But do you know the whole thing? We're going to go down the rabbit hole here.
We were talking about Leonard Nimoy.
We were, but he's inspired so much. About G.I. Joe, the movie, the animated G.I. Joe movie that came out like a few months after Transformers, the movie.
No.
Was not theatrical release, was supposed to be, but what happened was...
Okay.
Transformers the movie came out and there was such a like backlash and parents basically writing in saying you've traumatized my child because Optimus Prime died that they changed the G.I. Joe movie because G.I. Joe movie Duke was supposed to die. They were just freaking bloodthirsty that year. Like just kill all your heroes, all your children's heroes. And so it's incredibly awkward because they didn't want to reanimate anything. So it's literally like Duke is like horribly hurt at the top of the movie when he's supposed to die. It's supposed to be like, that's his death. He's gone from the rest of the movie. And at the end of the movie, they're like, hey, word just came in. Duke's going to be okay. Yay! And it's just awkwardly like put in over them standing there and all.
You know what? I don't know. If these parents had never seen The Last Unicorn or any number of animated films that were equally traumatizing. Check out the Transformers animated movie if you haven't seen it. Though.
Right.
Now that you know,
but first you have to marathon like 50 episodes of the show just to understand.
Just to really care about them.
How?
Watch their heads get blown off.
We really got way off Leonard Nimoy here, but we started with him. But no, I will round back to that to just say no. It was one of those things where I did get very emotional, kind of surprised myself, but it made sense because it's just like. Yeah, Spock. Like, we all know Spock. And I know he had his own issues with I am Spock, I am not Spock, you know, but I think he'd accepted his place in pop culture history and the impact you can have by playing a character like that.
I think anybody would have had kind of conflicted feelings about that, particularly when they were trying to build the rest of their career.
When you're a younger actor.
When you're a younger actor and an artist, you know, he wrote poetry as well. And like, he was probably just trying to say like, I'm not just this thing. And then later he did embrace the fact, I mean, can you imagine if your life touched that many people in a positive way? Like, that's a pretty big gift. And
there was awesome stories I did not know that came out last week about the impact that character had, and even the fact that character was supposed to be half human and half Vulcan. And that letter, did you see that? From this was amazing, from like 1968, from this fan magazine where a girl had written in, teenage girl who's like, I'm half black, I'm half white, I kind of feel like not accepted by anyone. And Spock, and she said, like, I kind of connect with Spock, and then he wrote this, like, long thing about not letting other people and their judgments and how like what they think affect you.
I'm gonna cry now.
And Spock finding his place on the bridge of the Enterprise.
Why would you do this to me?
I'm sorry. It was lovely. No, and it was like, and so that's the other thing is like,
that's amazing.
What a great guy he was.
Yeah.
Like kind of was like a lot of great stories about that and how he used that character who was already being seen as this representative for a lot of people and embraced that. So.
Well, that's what Trek was about. I mean, that's kind of like the really cool thing about Trek, that it's like so much about that, you know, and so ahead of its time in terms of like that egalitarian message. And
another thing that came out was George.
I guess of its time.
Right.
Yeah.
But when they were doing the animated series, they were just for budgetary reasons. It was just supposed to be Shatner, Nimoy, DeForest Kelley, and like no one else. And Takei has said that Nimoy was the one who was like, wait a second, like this show was such a thing about diversity. That was like a big deal. You cannot not have Nichelle Nichols and George Takei come back and like actually like kind of put his foot down and got them jobs in that show. So, pretty, I know.
No, I'm sad.
Well, yeah. So he was awesome, and I think obviously, how can you not look back and just be like, wow, that's an impact, you know?
Yeah, huge. Scott wrote a great piece. Scott Calera wrote a great piece about it. It's on IGN. If you guys want to check it out.
You should check it out. And he's we are novice Trekkies.
Yes.
Scott's the real deal. So
he is for sure the real deal.
He's the real deal. Yeah, I have something I have to send him. I will. Star Trek related. Star Trek related. Moving on, we've been talking a lot about the casting of Supergirl, which they need to start shooting that sucker. They keep casting. It probably is shooting, actually. But I always do enjoy when they do this stuff. But Helen Slater and Dean Cain are in mystery roles in Supergirl.
Okay, I'm going to make you choose. Which one excites you more?
Helen Slater.
Right?
Even though it's like, there was like, Lois and Clark, I thought had its ups and downs, but overall is a better piece of work than that Supergirl movie.
How dare you? It's true.
But
you're right.
She was awesome.
She's so awesome.
And I love, this is what I kind of want to talk about a little more, but it's like, I love that when they embrace like the history like that and like what's come before, and that was the only live action Supergirl we'd ever had.
So just to contextualize for anyone that doesn't know, Helen Slater, who's Christian Slater's sister, played...
She is, isn't she?
Yep.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Played Supergirl.
In 1984 in a terrible movie. Yeah. Which is in continuity with the Christopher Reeve movie, actually. It was the first attempt at a shared... And I actually, we should do a whole article about that.
Yeah.
Because it was set in the world of that movie while Christopher Reeve wasn't in it. They had Mark McClure show up as Jimmy Olsen to kind of be that representative.
Of the Link.
But it's awful.
It's not good. I remember, but there's so few ladies.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just, that you were just like...
Yeah. And in fact, this is going to get really really oddly specific, but I feel like that movie, it may still be the only movie we've had that is like a super powered Marvel or DC character starring in a movie. Not like a, on the side character. I still think that's the only one that's come out. We know there's coming, like Captain Marvel and Wonder Woman. But like you got Catwoman, you've got Elektra. It's like they're all like they don't have powers, It's like they're the characters that have physical skills.
Are you saying that sex appeal is not a power? Because it absolutely is.
It is, but it's different. It's not a meta power.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So
let us know if you can think of another one.
And she was great in a terrible movie. And then Dean Cain, of course, played Superman and Lois and Clark in the '90s, which had a nice, successful run and had its own kind of pop culture.
What if they're her parents?
So that's the thing. It's easy to go to that, and I thought that too for a second, but they've cast a different actress, Laura Benetti, I hope I'm saying your last name right, from Smash. Nashville is her Kryptonian mother. So there still leaves room for other parental figures.
There are others. Yeah, exactly. They could be earthbound.
So I feel like if nothing else, she'll be some sort of mentor, some sort of thing. So because we just went through this with John Wesley Shipp last year because he was cast in The Flash, and it was like, okay, is he Jay Garrick?
Yeah.
Is he his dad? He's his dad, And it's a fun tradition that goes back, especially in Superman adaptations, because even Smallville, Helen Slater popped up on that. I think Dean Cain did too.
Did she?
Yeah, she did. And it's a tradition in Superman adaptations, even going back to when the Christopher Reeve movie had like the actors who played like Lois and Jimmy pop up. that you do this, but Berlanti, who obviously produces Arrow and Flash and now Supergirl,
particularly,
he seems to really like that. The fact that he put so many people from the 1990 Flash TV show.
I think it's nice to nod at the history, and like those who get it will be tickled, like we will be and are. And if you don't, it doesn't also matter, you know.
Or it can kind of be cool information, because I've actually even seen in our comments people, when we've written about like, oh, Mark Hamill is going to reprise playing the Trickster, and people go, I didn't know this show existed, and there's always going to be someone who's like, oh, really? There was a Flash TV show in 1990. There was a Supergirl movie.
Yeah, well, that one we don't blame you for not knowing about.
Right. But even the Flash TV show is very short-lived.
Yeah, that's true. We don't blame you for not knowing about any of it.
Yeah. So, I think that's really cool, and we'll see, you know, it's always funny when they have
more people are likely to get the Dean Cain
connection. Yeah, it's more recent, and it was
popular.
It was more popular. It was cover of magazine, especially at the time. Terry Hatcher was so... Remember, wasn't she like the most downloaded woman on the internet the first time you could ever say that someone was the most downloaded anything?
I don't know if I'd want to test that theory.
I think circa 1997.
I did see her in a restaurant the other night, though. Anyway, it's a whole other story.
She popped up in Smallville right near the end, yes.
Just having dinner right next to me.
Super dinner? Well, and so I'm curious if how close they'll keep the secret of who they're playing. Because sometimes the only problem is sometimes it's not like, it's like, oh, you know. So, sometimes you don't need to keep everything a secret. But
you don't.
Yeah.
But they like to. They inevitably will.
Especially comic book adaptations. Yeah. I want to talk about The 100, because it's going into its season finale next week, but it's already renewed, which makes me very, very happy.
So I have a confession to make.
Well, it's not a confession to me, but yes.
I have not. Even though each week you are vocal about your support of the show, I have not caught up with it. I just...
There's a lot of TV.
There's so much TV.
I get it. I mean, like look, we all have those shows. I love it. We all have those shows. I need to catch up on Banshee. Fowler and Sepinwall and a bunch of people I trust in this regard are like, watch Banshee. We all have those shows. It's like, we need to do it. But ask me why I love The 100.
Why do you love The 100?
And I will say spoiler free. And I've been wanting to do this for a while, just because it's like, have a chance to be like, hey,
I'm like your puppet right now.
Speak, dance, ask me why I like The 100. It's awesome. It's a show, and it's funny. You always have that caveat. I know it's like, okay, the first few were kind of rough. It's often true. It's just how TV works.
I liked the pilot, actually.
And I did too. That's the funny. There are people who are like, oh, the pilot sucks. I thought pilots are tough, guys. Pilots are very tough. So considering this was kind of a big reach show, I think the pilot did its job as far as like, here's what's going on. Yes, the pilot has a lot of the overt things that were going to make our audience, IGN audience especially, very cynical about this show, which is it's very attractive young people in this sci-fi setting, and are they too clean? Are they too attractive? Is it like it's the trappings of sci-fi, but it's not real sci-fi? Were a lot of the early complaints, right? But I think that I think that was a disservice to sort of some of the story elements, and B, a few episodes in, and you start to really see like, oh, they're going to some interesting places.
There's a lot of sci-fi with very attractive, clean people.
Right. I mean, there is that funny thing. Are you like, oh, so is the Battlestar cast just hideous?
Were they just Caprica 6.
Oh, she was gross.
Oh, gross.
You could hardly look at the screen when she was taking her clothes off.
And all of the other Cylons.
Right. Yeah. The Cylons were.
Well, I mean, if you're going to make yourself,
I guess, and duplicates.
And duplicate, you would choose an attractive model.
Yeah. But, so I understood it to an extent. And then, the first season, there is a few things that have like the CW trappings. And the thing that I complained about the most the first season was there was this love triangle that I just didn't buy into story-wise. Because I think people go to extremes with things, right? And so I always think it's funny when people are like, love story, whatever, as if every story you don't like has a love story element. Right. Almost every story,
Every story pretty much. I'm trying to think of any that don't.
Even, there are some where it's like he lost someone he loved, so it's kind of in the past. I mean, and it's not, of course, yes, people find exceptions. There are some that don't, but I mean, even when it came down to it, I've talked about, if you want to say about love triangles, I mean, you could say Star Wars has a love triangle. I know how it turns out, but I'm just saying Star Wars has a love triangle.
It has a very disturbing one, as a matter of fact.
That's where it goes. Yeah. That's the story George wanted to tell. The Dark Knight has a love triangle. Dark Knight has a love triangle not from the comics, where, suddenly at its core, The Dark Knight has a love triangle with Batman and Two-Face and a girl they invented. And I'm saying that to be silly because it's a freaking awesome movie. But I'm saying if you wanted to be like, oh, they threw in a love triangle.
Right.
Which is all funny for me to say the love triangle did not work in The 100, but the show got better and better. And by the end of the first season, I thought really kind of found itself. And season 2, guys, I'm just saying, it's freaking kick-ass. And it's become one of my absolute favorite shows on TV right now. Like it's like the one I have to watch. We were talking beforehand about shows you kind of leave on your DVR.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, so pretending that, what is the show that becomes the sacrificial lamb to make room for?
I don't know. I mean, that's the question.
Tell people to kill.
I don't want to make that decision for you.
You have to make that decision.
No, I can't.
Yes,
I can't.
you do.
Last Man Standing.
Okay.
All you hardcore Last Man Standing fans have to put it to the side. No, I know it's been, and one thing I will say is this season's been very gratifying to actually look at the comments on IGN and see it go from the like, pretty people, whatever, and then people are like, this show is awesome. And
I'm just so fascinated that that's because it's not as if, again, like Arrow doesn't have attractive.
I know. I think, but Arrow had to, Arrow were based on a comic book, so we're going to instantly sort of grab people, and this was based on a book that hadn't come out yet. And it just had to overcome more obstacles. And CW, I mean, it goes back years, but CW, because of what they once were, there's this cynicism and this defensiveness about it. Even though if you look at that network now and the shows they put on, and I'm not saying they all work or whatever, but the kind of shows they're putting on, there's so much genre. It's like they're
very genre heavy.
Genre heavy.
I will say though, as a fan of sci-fi, I do like, one of the things that I really liked about Fringe was, yes, the main actors, like Anna Torv is gorgeous, right?
Yeah.
Like, so they're very attractive people, but they didn't dress her up.
Right.
She looked very dressed down, she couldn't help but be gorgeous, but she was very much like dressed down to look like a real FBI agent, and it peppered the world with people that looked real.
I'm glad you mentioned that because now if you look at some of the actors on the 100 from what they began with,
when Bolivia was introduced, people were like,
right. But if you look at a lot of the actors on the 100 from when the show began to now, they have changed them drastically, and some of it's the dirt and blood factor and the fact that the show gets super violent. And I will even say I like that when people get hurt on the show, it takes a few episodes for them to heal because. Arrow's actually way guilty of this. I remember the season premiere, Felicity got so hurt, like blood is all over her, and then like the next scene, she's like pristine.
Anyway.
The 100 people's wounds stick around, the blood and mud stick around, and a lot of the characters have gone through major transformations as far as who they are and who they're aligning with, and what that means for how they look. And they look drastically different in really cool ways that make it kind of fascinating, kind of like we talked about with Walking Dead, to like look at like a season 1. Photo to like where a lot of them go,
and then they just cleaned Rick up again.
Right.
Yeah.
But he
was looking like a mountain man.
Yeah,
and appropriately.
Exactly, and so that's been a kind of, it almost makes it kind of great that they had the like, we're fresh-faced young, beautiful people, because you see like where they took them and kind of took the characters. So.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that always adds texture.
Yeah.
I mean, in the case of The Walking Dead, you're like, the worst thing about this apocalypse? Like, no showers. People must stink so... You look at them and you're like, you gotta stink.
Yeah. That's going to be a whole episode where they finally deal with that issue.
Deal with the stink?
Yeah. So I purposely left...
They should deal with the stink in a big way, though.
Oh, yeah.
Like the global stink. But we'll talk... I mean, the dead body stink.
That's a 3-episode arc,
okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I kept spoilers out of this just to say, The 100, it's just ending its second season. Please, I think a lot of you, if you haven't been watching, check it out. Season 1 is on Netflix. Season 2 will eventually be on Netflix, but you can buy it on Amazon and iTunes. And that's my pitch.
That's your pitch.
That's my pitch, and I'm sticking to it.
I'm sold. I still don't know what I'm supposed to sacrifice, though, because you won't answer.
You'll have to flip a coin. Figure it out. All right, let's move on to, there are going to be some premieres. While I'm gallivanting about Europe, there's some premieres coming up. Although one of them is this Friday, actually. Netflix is suddenly escalating in a big way.
Yes.
Back-to-back weeks of shows. So we just got House of Cards back. And they're like, you freaking binge that because we have another show for you on March 9th.
And they say it just like, that's the advertisement.
That's the advertisement. You freaking finish it.
Binge it!
Actually, should be Kevin Spacey saying to the camera.
Binge it.
Watch Kimmy Schmidt.
Not allowed to curse, but you can imagine.
The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt comes on Friday. If people don't know, it's a weird backstory on this show and where
Tell the people.
From. It was produced for NBC. It was ordered last year. It was announced in May. They went to upfronts. Ellie Kemper's the star and Tina Fey's the producer, which is a big combo. They were promoting the show. Oh, we're coming to NBC next year. They had filmed, I think they might have even completed production on all 13. But I know they gotten way into the season.
And NBC's like...
Well, I think what they said at TCA was that... I don't remember if you were at that panel or not.
For that, no.
Yeah, okay. They said that, I mean, I think... reading between the lines, there was concerns on all... NBC's having a terrible year with comedy. They can't launch any comedies. It's really sort of a sad place for them to be considering their comedy history. Everything was bombing.
Although that's been... I feel like that's been so far in the past now. Like
I know, but it is interesting because like Parks and Rec was wrapping up, which was the last remnant. They canceled Community, even though someone else saved it, and then Parks and Rec went into its final season. So as far as quality goes, even though both those shows were never ratings hits.
Yeah, that was the last bastion of great comedy.
And there were shows that they had that some people liked, some people didn't, like A to Z, but nothing worked. Nothing hit chord. So. Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, I think there was a lot of concerns about where are they going to air this, what they're going to air it with. And so, the way that they said, I'm blanking on his name, but Tina Fey's co-producer, I think Robert Carlock, he said that he implied it was them who went to NBC, probably because of their concerns, and said, what if we talked to some other people about this? And what if we went on a break? But... although
we're on a break.
It's worth noting that NBC produced this show; they own it, and so that's where you get into an interesting thing because they want this show to succeed.
How does that financial model work?
I mean, for them, it's now like any show that they like. It's like
so they got a cut of whatever Netflix paid.
Yeah, it's like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, being an NBC Universal show, where it's like they now just license the show off to Netflix, and so Netflix acquired the show, which had finished filming season 1 and ordered a second season. And so now it's going to, come out.
So get ready to binge.
So get ready to binge.
It's either that or 100.
Yeah.
Choose.
I think both. Yeah.
Okay.
Both are on Netflix.
I don't know why I'm having so much fun doing this too.
Choosing.
Choose.
And it was interesting because Tina Fey said that while they'd mostly finished the season, it still meant that they could kind of go back and editorially, they didn't have to freak out about the 22 minutes.
Are you you were a 30 Rock fan? Or?
I love 30 Rock.
Yeah, me too. So I will really, she's such a hero of mine, Tina Fey. I love Ellie Kemper too, but Tina Fey.
Yeah.
So I will not be able to watch this weekend. That is the fact.
Yeah,
because I have other things that I am committed to do.
Right.
That you will find out about. But man, do I want to? I haven't seen any of it because I didn't go.
I've seen the first 3, and I liked it a lot. Like it wasn't like, oh my god, amazing, but Ellie Kemper is adorable and playing, a role that she's kind of perfect for. The plot is, what's that movie with Brendan Fraser? Because it is similar plot. It's the same idea of someone who has been away from society, although here the setup is that she was in a cult, that she was one of like a few women that this guy had taken into his crazy cult that was just him and a few women in a bunker while he convinced them that the world had ended, and they've been there since they were teenagers. There's total dark inferences here about this, but that finally
sounds hilarious.
They're discovered, and now she is in the world, has this bright-eyed Ellie Kemper who's been in a bunker for a better part of 20 years, and now is in Manhattan.
It actually has elements of Mean Girls.
Yeah, a little bit. Because and she's, although it's
not that she was in a cult or hidden away, but she was just raised outside of the pure culture of American schools.
Right, and it's called The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt because she's just such an optimistic.
I only bring that up because Tina Fey wrote.
Right. Oh yeah, no, it's a good point. It's a good point. Yeah, because Ellie, on the show, her character is very optimistic, very like glasses half full. Just the sort of like, everything's going to be great character who, especially given what she went through, they kind of deal with that. And now it's on Netflix. It'll be interesting to see kind of how they shape the show going forward. And they were joking about the fact that they don't think they'll suddenly add like, I guess I can't say the words either, but a million lines of profanity when they weren't in season 1. But I guess you could sneak them in, So yeah, I think that's it's a fun route for Netflix to go as they branch out into a lot of different shows.
And way more to come sooner.
It's in Bloodline like 2 weeks after.
Yeah, and then we got Daredevil in April.
It's busy times for them. Yeah. Also,
and for us.
Busy for us. Well, it'll be busy and good for us. Debuting on Monday the 9th is the did I say? I think Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt is the 6th. Yeah, and then on the 9th.
That's
Friday.
Isn't it Saturday?
Friday. Yeah. On the 9th is The Returned on A&E, which is going to debut right after Bates Motel's return. No pun intended. So it's a night of Carlton Cuse.
It is an evening with Carlton Cuse. So The Returned is obviously, it's the American remake of the French. It's weird because when I had first heard of The Return, the French series, people were referring to it as a French zombie series.
Sorry, phone.
It is not that at all. Like it is I didn't actually watch the French series, but based on, I saw the pilot of the American series, and from what I know of the French series, yes, people return from the dead. No, they are not mindless zombies.
No, and let's clear up confusion here. And I'm saying this is very understandable confusion because there is the French series, which is I'm gonna massacre this, but Las Reverends, or however you say it in French, but it translates into The Returned. French show about a small town where people return from the dead looking the same as they did when they died, what's going on, and kind of following.
Same age, even if 10 years
Yeah. And looking the exact same, and everyone kind of dealing with that. So there was that French show.
Yeah.
Then ABC does a TV show called Resurrection.
Right.
Based on a book, I believe, of the same name, about a small town where the dead return, looking the same age as when they died. Not a remake of that French show because it was based on a book that was made separately, but it's the same concept.
And then there is The Return. Oh. Hello, who is he? There's the A&E
Return,
show, which actually is a remake.
Of the French show, but is going to be airing simultaneously with the ABC show.
Right.
So it's a very strange time for returning dead people. And
there's a lot of dead people coming back.
Because also the French show is, I believe, doing a second season.
They are doing a second season. And then once they do the second season, at that point...
all 3 shows cross over?
There's a big dead crossover.
Right.
And then they do cross over with The Walking Dead and it's actual zombies.
And iZombie.
And iZombie. So...
she snarks. Right.
The Returned is... I did an interview with Carlton Cuse, which we'll have up at a certain point. But he did say that I think for the first 5 or 6 episodes, it's pretty well linked to the French series, and then it just kind of goes on its own path. And then heading into season 2, it will really be its own thing because they have no idea what the French series is doing at this point.
And this is a weird issue that it always comes up at TCA, press tour a lot, because you're always going to be in a room with a lot of people who've seen the original of these shows.
And they'll kind of go off on a rant, and it's an understandable rant to some degree about why do you need to remake this great French series? Can't people watch this great French series? And your answer is always like, they won't.
They won't. I mean, and not to say no one will, but it's going to be a very small audience.
It's going to be a very small audience here in the U.S.
Yes, yeah.
And you're like, it's just sort of a silly argument to be like, oh, aren't you worried about people will already know what's going to happen? It's like, you were talking about such a small percentage of the TV viewing population.
Yeah.
That will even know that the French series exists, much less care. And
we just went through it with Grace Point and Broadchurch, and I understand that then the naysayers are quick to be like, oh, and people did not embrace Grace Point, but I just think that's because they weren't going to embrace Grace Point. You know, it wasn't going to live or die by the fact that it was a remake of this other show that had a lot of the same visuals, including the same lead actor, you know?
Yeah. Well, I will say that Grace Point and Broadchurch were a little more odd to me, only in the sense that
English language,
both
and
English,
the same actor.
Yeah, it's David Tennant, and they're both in English, and like BBC America certainly has a big, there's a channel here.
Yeah,
so there's BBC America where you could have seen Broadchurch already. If you're watching it, probably you just have it for Doctor Who, whatever.
Right. And Orphan Black.
And Orphan Black. But you're right. I think I really think that so few people will have seen the French.
It'll be whether The Return works or not will not be. It won't be a factor. Even though, Matt, have you seen the original?
I haven't.
Okay, same here.
And I don't want to at this point. I mean, it's funny because I was sort of thinking about watching it heading in, and I was like, well, why not just see what this is all about and then go back and watch that one?
Yeah.
I liked it. I really enjoyed the pilot for this. It was my kind of show.
I did too, but like I talked to Matt Fowler, who loves the original, and he said it was a carbon copy. Like as far as that pilot is, like it's one of the, and that happens a lot with remakes. Even The Office did this, where like the pilot is really similar. Like they pretty much use the same template. So he said, yeah, it was weird because it's like here's the English language version of the same beats, the same stuff happening.
Yeah.
So that's always going to bug people who knew the original, but that's going to be a very small percentage. And then, yeah, like you were saying, they've said that a few episodes in is when it starts to really kind of tangent off. And
he said by the end of the season, it's definitely different than where the French series goes.
But I found the pilot, again, having not seen the original, which is going to be the experience of most people who flip this on.
Yeah.
I thought it was very interesting, very evocative. And yeah, I was intrigued by what was going on. And
I do wonder, though, with any sort of series like this, like what level of patience will people have before they really want an answer?
Right.
You know, why are these people back? Is it one season? And that's something that I did talk with him about. Like, you know, with Lost, I felt like there was an infinite amount of patience until the end of the series.
Right.
Before new questions, sort of answers that gave more questions.
Lost had the benefit, which also was something that got them in trouble, of having a situation where every week almost something new and crazy could pop up, you know, to keep people talking. But on The Returned, we assume that the dead returning is the one thing, you know.
We think that'll be big enough.
That'll be big enough. But that, you're right, then that people start to fixate on that one thing.
Because I got to confess, my patience level has, I don't know if it's like, you know, after years of having multiple windows open and I just don't have the mental capacity to stay tuned in for that long. But my patience level is limited. I really want, if it's a 10-episode arc, I want a big answer by the end of it. You can present a new question, but I do want a big answer by the end of that.
Yeah, no, I understand. Did you ever watch the 4400?
I watched half of it.
Okay, I really like that show.
Returning to my previous point.
Really like that show, and I actually really liked
too,
at the end of the first 6, when it was a miniseries, they kind of gave you the initial answer of like what happened to these people. Yeah, which is actually kind of a similar. I mean, setup is a little similar. Yeah.
Battlestar even sort of did that thing of they would give you a answer and then lay in a new question.
Right. It's definitely possible to do.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's the method The Return takes. Yeah. We'll find out. Continue on to
with dead people.
More dead people. Yes. March is March Dead Madness. We've got here March 17th. iZombie premieres on CW, and
another genre show.
Another genre show for CW. Another DC Comics based show for CW.
Though
with
very
the caveat,
different.
Very different.
Very different than the comic from.
Yeah, well, it's a few things. First of all, it's based on a Vertigo comic. You know, it's just a DC imprint. It's not only is it not in continuity with Arrow and The Flash, but the comic book is its own.
It would be amazing.
Wouldn't it be amazing if it was? I should say that I assume it's not. Then the season finale when Oliver shows up. Yeah, and Barry
sexes her up.
Whoa, hey, you were just going right to a different place than I was. But yeah, the comic book is not part of the DC universe, even though it's DC puts it out. The TV show is its own thing too. But yeah, it's based on a DC comic, another genre show for CW, and it's the creator of Veronica Mars, Rob Thomas. Yeah,
Rob Thomas, who I love. And, I'm failing Rob Thomas right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man, the second series.
Party Down?
Thank you.
No problem.
Party Down. Veronica Mars and then Party Down, which I really loved that one as well.
Too. Yeah.
So we're both huge Veronica Mars, unabashed Veronica Mars fans. Also enjoy Party Down, love Rob Thomas.
Yeah.
This show, and if you like Veronica Mars, this is a good thing. I'm saying this is a good thing.
Yeah.
This show is exactly Veronica Mars if she was a zombie. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, it really is. And I will say for some, you know, because I even at TCA, I think I had some discussions with people where for some people, it bothered them, right?
Right.
Because for some people, it was kind of like, oh, he's kind of returning to something he did before. To which I say, but he does it really well.
He does it really well. Okay, these are my arguments.
Yeah.
He does it. I will say that there's an aesthetic. Okay, so Veronica Mars did a lot of flashbacks in the first, especially in the first season when it was looking back at the murder, the big murder that she was.
And it was the most noir that first season.
It was. And so it had this very particular aesthetic when it would flash back.
Yeah.
And iZombie has the same aesthetic when she's going into. Okay, so we should explain.
Yeah, we should probably explain what the show is and how it's similar to Veronica Mars, except to say that it's a show called iZombie.
We should explain.
Yes.
There's a young woman.
Yeah.
Who is a doctor, and she's in a residency, I think.
I can't remember, but
in any event,
she's doing something. She's got a stethoscope.
She goes out one night, big mistake, zombie horde attack. She becomes a zombie, and then she goes to, I'm not spoiling anything, this happens in the first 2 minutes.
The setup.
She goes to work in a morgue so that she can eat brains, so that she can nourish herself with brains, which keeps her acting and looking sort of human.
Right.
Like she's not full, like if she was starving and didn't have any brains, she would.
Yeah, there's like levels of zombie. Like,
there's levels.
Yeah, in the show, you do become what we can think of as a full drooling, mindless zombie if you don't keep feeding. Yeah.
But when you eat the brains, you get the memories of the person, and she also will adopt like some of their personality traits.
Yeah, kind of like Chuck when he could like access things and abilities.
Until it's digested and she eats, I guess, kind of digested, and she eats, I don't know how that works, and then she eats new brain. So the idea is that when she gets their memories, that aesthetic is the same thing that to show that she's getting a memory.
Yeah.
That they used in Veronica Mars to show a flashback. So it looks very similar.
Right, and the main character in both shows is a young, feisty girl, really snarky, edgy, likable. There's a certain similar energy. Both shows have narration by that character.
And in both shows, there is detecting. So because she's getting these memories, a lot of times these people are victims of some crime.
Or were involved in some crime.
Exactly. So she uses the memories to solve crimes. Veronica Mars, obviously, her dad was a private detective, and she did a lot of private digging.
Yeah, and so it's got that engine that there's an engine there to give her like a case of the week.
Right.
So all that being said, it is very similar. There is the trappings, and I talked to some people who were like, "Oh, he's kind of repeating himself," but I just don't think that voice is on TV right now.
It's not, and
so that's why I'm so happy to have it back. You know?
And the thing is, like, he loved that series. Yes. Kristen Bell did too.
There's a reason that movie exists, besides the fact that the fans support that that they'd care.
They love it so much.
Right.
And he loves it so much, and we love it so much. So to me, it's like, I guess he is kind of doing it without redoing it on television, which is fine. If you liked Veronica Mars and zombies, you will like this. But even if you haven't seen Veronica Mars, then he's introducing this idea to a whole new audience.
Yeah.
It wasn't a huge hit, that show.
No, it's a cult show. So we should say we've seen the first 4, and I think can speak for you. You'll tell me if I'm wrong with it. We both really enjoy it.
Yeah.
I think it's a very fun show, likable group of characters. Yes, it begins with a very heavy procedural element. There is a case of the week. But I talked to Rob Thomas. I'll pimp out my interview with Rob Thomas coming up, where he said that Pushing Daisies was an inspiration, which that makes sense, because Pushing Daisies, we all think of how creative and wonderful that show was. It also was a case of the week show with a sort of macabre element to it. This is kind of doing that similar, while there is a back burner serialized element that's going to start to take seed as it goes into the rest of the season.
There's a villain who plays a role throughout.
Yeah. And that's going to start to rise up and cross paths. Rise up. And so the first 4, I kind of burnt through them, and I was like, this is fun. Yeah. This is, I like having this voice again back on TV.
It's definitely a show I would look forward to watching every week. You know, and I mean, that's the most, we watch so much television, so that actually is saying a lot, you know, that like, I really would actively be like, what's the gang down at the morgue up to?
What's the gang at iZombie doing? Yeah. We say check out iZombie. And I do want to say also, get beyond the cynicism and the negativity about the title. It is a cutesy title, but guys, remember, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, and there's also, speaking of Buffy, there's a nice support cast around her. That's very charming as well.
Very charming, yeah. And you can even see in those first 4, and I've talked to a lot of the cast, did a set visit, how they kind of started to figure out more combinations and how a couple actors really play well off each other. Yeah, I say give it a shot. And yeah, move beyond the title. It's a winky title, but yeah, there's plenty of shows that have goofy titles that you can enjoy.
You said Buffy.
I did say Buffy! Buffy Bell, yay. Thank you for remembering. So, iZombie, March 17th. All right, let us move into the reader email portion of the podcast here.
Okay. I don't know why I was like, let's do.
I hate when I massacre names, but I'm going to massacre nouns. Agilel, maybe? I'm not sure, but we'll try. But you wrote a very interesting email here, and thank you for listening to the podcast. All right. I wanted to ask you guys about Gotham. Okay. I'm surprised more people aren't talking about how god-awful the show is. Strong words. I feel like I should preface this by saying I'm a huge Batman fan, but I'm also open to new and interesting interpretations of anything. They could have decided to have Bruce's parents abducted by aliens for all I care. I don't know. That's interesting. If it was written and acted well, I could watch it. I honestly don't see a single element of the show that doesn't leave me scratching my head. From Jada Pinkett Smith's terrible Eartha Kitt impression to Jim Gordon constantly scowling at everybody in the city, there seems to be a fundamental problems with the show, but nevertheless, it appears to be doing very well in the ratings. I have 2 questions for you sage TV gurus. What is your impression of the show's acting, plot, and script? And do you think that once the novelty of the show, that it's a Batman TV show, runs out, that it will last past a second season? I'm going to skip over your one example of a scene you don't like for brevity's sake. Thanks for all the entertainment and news you guys provide. Much love to you guys, Shakma.
Oh, Shakma.
So that was very
nice.
Sweet there. Strong words here.
Let's tackle facts, the ratings first. Like, what do you think about,
Well, the ratings, so it started out very strong.
Yeah.
It has dropped through the season, not drastic, not like, oh my God, we're in trouble. But it's, dropped down into a more sort of, level place. We'll see. You never know how these things will go the second season. I mean, Sleepy Hollow was an interesting case for Fox where the first season did very optimistically for them and they gave it a very early renewal. And season 2 really struggled in the ratings to a point that I'm actually I can't really even explain that one because while I do think season 2 was a drop down in quality, it wasn't to the point where I can understand that many people bailing on it. It's
interesting because at TCA's at the executive session, the mandate given to Sleepy Hollow was to become more episodic and hopefully gain back an audience that way.
But you never know. It's like what meetings are happening at Fox now because a few weeks that was the week Empire had premiered or second week. And now we're in the world of Empire, the juggernaut. Growing and growing.
And
that's super serialized.
Yeah, it's very serialized. It's a soap opera.
Yeah.
I mean, it is really a soap opera. One thing leads to the next. But with Gotham, the mandate was keep doing what you're doing. It's working, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
It has dropped off a little bit. I mean, just in our little world, I have seen interest in the series wane some amongst our audience.
Bruce Wayne? Sorry, had to.
Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
It has dropped off a bit for our audience.
And then it spikes. Here's
when the Joker shows up.
Right, which is a mixed message that we all send.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Gotham is awful. I would think that, to me, that's overstatement. I think Gotham is really messy, and hasn't found its center of what it is,
I agree.
And that's its biggest problem, I think, is I think it's trying to be a lot of things at once.
And I thought that, even just I think that we had a conversation about the pilot and said just that, and I think it's still true today, where it was trying to tackle multiple tones at the same time and wasn't quite sure where it wanted to focus, and I still really feel that each time I watch an episode. I'm not exactly sure what you want to do tonally. There's a world in which I understand what you're saying about sort of the writing and the performances, which is very heightened.
Yeah.
Very. There is a world in which that makes sense. There is a tone of a series in which that makes sense. I'm not sure they have nailed it yet, though.
I think it's just because everything's being approached from different ways, so you don't quite get what is the show trying to be? Because there are good and even great elements to Gotham, But it's just I want them to scale back. That's the thing. I want them to scale back. I wish the show would be more focused on these cops and these crime bosses with, on the outskirts, the idea that there's something weird happening in this town that could grow. But right now, it's the cops and the crime bosses, and now we're starting to get, like, every week, a prototype Batman villain.
Prototype, and then watching the ones that we already have on the show kind of evolve and develop even more. And again, we've said this a bunch. It's not subtle, you know what I mean? Like, if Selena and Ivy are dressing up, you know, it's like she's in all green.
Oh yeah, what I want them to not do, and they've done it a lot, unfortunately, is these characters are 90% there already.
Yeah,
it's
which
like,
doesn't give them a lot of room.
Right, like Edward Nygma is the Riddler.
He's the
just
Riddler
working for
right
the
now.
cops. Yeah,
he's just not evil yet.
Right, and so it's like there's not enough room for transformation, and that's why when they introduced, I wasn't part of the conversation you guys had about the whole Joker thing, but I was like, okay, if we are, and I know that they're being very cagey, but it's like if that was the Joker, he's the Joker. Like he just doesn't have white skin yet, you know.
Yeah, the hair's not quite there.
Right,
the skin's not quite there, but otherwise, in every way, that is the Joker.
Yeah,
you know.
And so that's why I hope that's not. And and so, you know, and performance-wise, like, okay, let's even talk about Jada Pinkett Smith, who I actually really liked in the pilot.
I did too.
And was certainly heightened from the start, right? It was not being subtle. But in the pilot, I was like, okay, I get what she's doing, and this is really fun. Week to week, there are some weeks when I don't know. But I think that it, again, is a product of the show. And the show going to some very goofy places, but then playing some other stuff very serious.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the thing is, my assumption about what she is trying to do, or her intention, is that she you know, grew up and, like, you know, she clawed her way to the top. And she puts on this very affected air and mannerisms as a mask, kind of.
Yeah.
And that every once in a while the mask will drop and she'll speak in her own voice. And that's what, like,
kind of like Batman.
Kind of like Batman. So I see that and I get it, but I don't think it always works in practice.
Right.
I agree. You know, it's an interesting thing. We were talking about this, like, there are shows that I actively am like, oh, I'm really excited to watch Better Call Saul this week. I'm glad I get to watch that, and I'm gonna review it. You know, Gotham. I'm like, oh, I guess I'll watch Gotham because we'll cover Gotham.
Yeah, and right now I have 2 Gothams on my DVR. Yeah, it's like, and I always catch up, but I want it to be a show where I can't wait.
Yeah,
you know? I was mentioning The 100 earlier. I want it to be like The 100, where I'm like, yeah, I'm freaking watching that. You know,
I'm excited for this to come on.
Because there is, it is a Batman-oriented show, so it's like, and there is a lot of things about it that I should be loving, but I'm not loving yet. There are a lot of, you know, again, I think if they scale back, it could all work. I still like, you know, at its core, I like the, you know, Gordon and Bullock dynamic. I still think, you know, Robin Lord Taylor is excellent.
I love him.
He's great. And the idea of, like, watching the evolution of that character, because when the show began, I'm like, oh, I get having Penguin there from the start.
Sure, and you really thought, okay, we're going to focus on Penguin for this year, and that'll be really interesting to watch. Like that'll be this season's arc. It'll be about the Penguin, which it was and it was great. He was great to watch, and then that's just kind of been, like, shifted. To the side.
And now you start to be like, next week the Scarecrow, next week the Joker, next week Dollmaker.
I was like, we're still focused on Penguin, aren't we?
Right. And it's just like, relax, guys, because your Bruce Wayne is so young, who, again, I don't even think should be part of the show on a weekly basis. I think they should have had him. I understand it's beginning with the Wayne murder, but then I kind of wish they took Bruce off the table for a while. But he's a kid, so he can't. It's like they're promising things they can't deliver on. That's the problem. It's like, if next season Batman showed up, great, but he can't.
But he can't unless they do a crazy time jump. And then you have a completely different series.
Yeah.
It's Batman, the series.
Right.
You know, like...
Which I know people would love, but I don't think they're doing that.
I don't think they are either. You know, I think the plan was to do Gotham pre-Batman. Like, you know, they're like, eventually it's going to get so bad that Eventually.
I
mean, like, it's pretty bad right now. Like, how are they going to survive?
Right.
10 some odd years before he's able to really, or more, before he's able to really be Batman. You know?
So, you know, look, the show is already renewed, which gives us a leg up that a lot of shows don't have. I hope they do kind of use, you know, because I think this season's this season. I don't know. I hope going into season 2, I want them to scale back, and I know that's hard. That's what I was saying about.
But they're not going to break a successful model.
They're not going to break a successful model, and I can't remember how the ratings correlate, but like I can tell you, yeah, like the week the Joker, whatever he was, appeared, we had a huge spike in the review of that episode that was bigger than it had been in weeks. So the show had started to fall. Like the readership for that week was like, bam.
Which happens. It happens. Like any given show, even on, the week on True Detective that X big thing happens.
You get the jump.
You get the jump.
Right. But it's just with Gotham because it is so, I think it's very tempting for the creators to be like, oh, let's throw them this villain,
Except that it's the villain, the bone that people will bite on is the Joker, right? Like they could bring in a number of other villains and people will be like, all right.
And they're kind of running out of the big Batman villains.
They really are. I mean, they're burning through them so fast, which is another thing that I'm like, slow your roll.
Yeah. I think we have now had a version of every Batman villain who has been in the movies except for Mr. Freeze. Well, I know Ra's al Ghul, but I think because of Arrow, they're not going to touch him. But Mr. Freeze, I believe they've even said is coming.
That would be the weirdest crossover.
Yeah.
That would be the weird.
Arrow?
He does not belong in that world.
No.
He would... I kind of want to see.
Well, I still want them to do a Crisis movie 5 years or 10 years from now that is like this insane movie with Michael Keaton and like everyone who's ever been, and Dean Cain and the cast of Gotham and Helen Slater and just
so weird.
The cast of the crappy Birds of Prey WB show.
Directed by I can never say his name. Inarritu.
Yeah. That's what I want.
Totally weird fever
Did you read
dream.
the Michael Keaton interview?
Directed by David Lynch.
Michael Keaton interview in EW when Birdman came out?
No, the one that he was like...
The cover story? He basically said at the end where he's like, because they were talking about playing a superhero and all this. And
I know this one.
And basically at the end when he's like, look, I don't want to say anything, because a year from now, if I'm sitting in a latex costume making a new... He was inferring Batman movie, which again, he was not inferring that anything was in talks, but I think it was more like, this is Hollywood. I'd be ridiculous to say I've never, ever, ever, because who the hell knows?
Who knows what I would do?
Yeah.
I'm Michael Keaton. I don't even know what I would do. I'm going to do Beetlejuice next year. I did hear this one, though, is that when Christian Bale, I don't think even really said this, but when it was interpreted that he said he was kind of jealous when he heard that Ben Affleck was cast as Batman, and they were like, oh, Michael Keaton, did you feel jealous? And he's like, no, you know why?
I'm Batman.
That
was badass thing you could say. Back to Gotham, wrapping up Gotham. Yeah, I don't know. I hope they can scale back, but that's a very hard thing to ever have people in Hollywood do.
I think the truth is that Sleepy Hollow is a good example of this. That unless the show is in true ratings crisis, they're not going to change.
Yeah,
they're going to keep doing what they're doing that's working. Why would they change?
Yeah. So I don't know, to answer your question about will it only last 2 seasons?
Working meaning effective, getting an audience.
Exactly, because that's a level of
two success. Very different things, right?
Very different, yeah. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see how season 2 goes. If there was, Sleepy Hollow currently is in danger suddenly of renewal. We'll find out. So we can't speak for Gotham. We don't know. There is going to be a core audience, I think, that always shows up for it. So
there's something about the connection to that character in particular that really draws people.
Yeah, freaking Batman, man.
It's Batman.
People love Batman. So we'll check in on Gotham again. That's it for now on that subject. Steve Gale writes, hey guys, I really enjoyed Roth and Jim's interview with Lance Reddick.
Thank you. That was amazing. He's so nice.
He's awesome, yeah. You guys mentioned you were Fringe fans. I've wanted to get into this show for a while, but I've always heard that, like a lot of sci-fi dramas, it had trouble finding its footing early on. Hey, like we said about The 100. I trust your recommendations. Can you suggest a jump on point in terms of a particular season or episode, or should I just binge watch from the first episode?
It's so funny because I met up with some friends this weekend, and we were talking about Fringe and how they had resisted it initially because they thought that it was just an X-Files ripoff, basically. And it never really felt like an X-Files ripoff to me, but it did feel very much like, oh, let's do the X-Files for this generation initially. And then in season 2 is where Fringe really starts to become like the serialized Fringe that I know and love. But it does go back and forth with some Monster of the Week type episodes because they were under a mandate by the network to try and do both at once, be serialized and be episodic, until eventually they were like, forget it.
And then it just became super dense.
Straight up super dense, very high concept, completely serialized, and that's when I love it. But I can't say that you can just skip ahead and get there.
No, I think you got to start from the beginning because there is a lot of world building and a lot of things. And I always remember, so Fringe started and it was like, this is promising, although I don't love it. Some common consensus in the office was that, and then there was some cool stuff, but the first several that are very case of the week. And Travis Fickett was actually reviewing the Fringe for us at that point.
That's crazy. Travis Fickett, who now created 12 Monkeys.
Yes, but he was reviewing Fringe. I hope he doesn't mind me bringing this up. But I always remember that it was the mid-season break episode, which was around 9 or 10, that was the first one that he gave like a really high score to. Because it was a good episode anyway, but it was also an episode that did something really cool, which is it took a couple of different earlier episodes that had felt completely standalone and said, guess what? There's actually something really important.
There's a payoff.
There was something we introduced in that episode. It was involving, I'll just say Jared Harris was on the show for Mad Men, and there was something with his character and stuff that was like, oh, that's actually really cool. Like that totally felt like, oh, we just did that thing and we're never going to address it again. And instead it was like, no, actually, that was important. That's not to say the show was perfect from then on. It still had its start and stops. Yeah. But that's kind of why I would say watch the whole thing. I came to really love those characters too, and the family dynamic, which is a familiar one on TV, but it worked really well.
Oh, that worked beautifully on Fringe. I mean, it'll break your heart. For me, I mean, there were some people that even now I talk to them that actually, that's okay. Mine's going off too. We're terrible humans. Never go out to dinner with us is the lesson that you learned. But I still know people now that did not care for when it got very serialized.
Oh no, it got so dense that there were people that complained about that. Yeah.
Exactly. For me, that's when I was like, that's when I totally, completely fell in love with the show.
J.J. Abrams is interesting because, and even though I know he wasn't involved in the day-to-day of Fringe, but he's had a couple of shows in recent years that he's executive producer on, Fringe and Person of Interest in particular, that began with a giant procedural engine. And then became more and more serialized as they went on, to the point that it was like, whoa, this is hard to figure out. And Person of Interest, another show I highly recommend. But you kind of do have to go back to the beginning, even though the first season is particularly is so case of the week.
Yeah.
But now, a few years in, it's like, oh my God, there's like 20 organizations dueling, and this person worked for this person, and that's dealing with that, and it just kind of creeps up on you.
I actually think that the reason that you really have to watch Fringe from the beginning is because what carries through, whether it was Case of the Week, Monster of the Week, or when it got very serialized, what carries through is the development of the relationships. So whether it's the relationship between you know, Olivia and Walter, which does take on kind of a paternal relationship, Peter and Olivia, Peter and Walter, whatever it is, that builds throughout the whole series. And those are the things that ultimately really, really pay off on the series. Plus, it's like an amazing alternate universe that is so rad.
And I have really cool stuff.
I have Amber. I have a little piece of. I won't say what Amber is, but it's a thing.
It's a thing. So yeah, we say all of Fringe. I think we're both big Fringe fans. So check it all out. Don't hold back.
I want something like that on the air right now that I can just be in love with like that. The 100, that's your cue to plug 100.
The freaking 100, yes. Check it out. We'll end here our last email with old friend of the podcast, Jeff Not Emma, who even begins with long time no write. I know I'm a terrible fan. Was it Jeff Not Emma? Do I recall that your Twitter handle is Jeff Not Emma, which is amazing? I don't even know, Roth, if you even know the backstory on Jeff Not Emma.
I don't.
I believe I'm correct that his Twitter handle is Jeff Not Emma, and that's because I, on a podcast, screwed up, and I think I think it was someone else's email. I kind of like blended them. So I read an email from this gentleman, Jeff, but I said it was from someone named Emma.
Oh.
And then cleared it up, and there was back and forth in email, and he started to sign his emails to us, Jeff Not Emma.
Oh.
Here we are, years later.
Nice to meet you, Jeff.
Yes.
I'll just call you Jeff if I may.
And this is actually, we're gonna get a meta here about stuff, because he asked an interesting question, kind of getting into what's happening here in our office, because he asks, are these video discussions like the Arrow chat that just went up on IGN part of a larger channel surfing podcast that hasn't hit yet? I'm just curious. And if they aren't, is it possible to have someone upload these features or weekly connection of them, has a podcast. I see IGN is really going big on the video content. Ooh, you're a crafty gentleman there, Jeff, not Emma. But there are a lot of loyal IGN readers/listeners who can't watch this stuff at work or driving to work. I feel like I'm missing more and more of what IGN covers. Video is great and all, but I, like many, find myself avoiding content that I can't read or listen to because of the manner in which it's provided. I'm all for ads and shilling too, if that's a concern. We love you, Jeff and Emma.
Paying rent is definitely a concern.
Yes, yes. So no, I don't know which Arrow conversation you're talking about for sure. I'm guessing maybe the spinoff, maybe I can't remember when he wrote this email.
We talk about Arrow a lot around these parts.
We do make sure that the actual headlines of the videos, if you look at the headlines, says Channel Surfing Podcast at the end if it was taken from the Channel Surfing Podcast.
Yeah, there's that. Okay, so I just want to try to make sure that I understand the question. The question was, can we provide
an audio version
of
the video conversations we have? No. Even though
I was going to say, I wasn't going to outright say no. Right? I was going to say, I don't know. I don't know.
I never say never. I just, I don't see it happening as far as just priority. And I also think it would be hard to package that because even though I am all for the, Eric Roth, Jim, Joshua, the people in the LA office talk about TV and movies as its own collection of things. I don't quite know that
the company would be down with
especially because they get so specific on spoilers. Like it's like we are talking about Walking Dead, and which is like a hardcore spoiler conversation, and to edit that together with like another Arrow full spoiler conversation. That's why we try to, if we do get into stuff like that, we try to save it for the end of the podcast because it's.
You know what you could do though, is you could just click the video at work and then open up another screen and listen.
But I think he's talking about
right?
I think maybe he's talking also about
in the car.
On the car, yeah.
I want to find a solution. I don't actually know. I don't think they would because I do think that the truth. I don't want to get so inside baseball, but there.
I mostly I wanted to
But there's resources sometimes are strained around these parts.
Everyone needs more.
Yeah, I don't know that
so
would really actually
I mean, so you're not missing like podcasts if you think like, oh, why is this Arrow conversation? Is this part of the podcast? No, don't worry about that. The other thing, I don't want to give you false hope. So let's just say no.
Yeah.
And then one day maybe we'll like give them
one day we will.
Extremely pleasant surprise.
Maybe we'll do. The Bubbling Up has been talks about doing some show specific podcasts, TV show, but that would probably be like Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
But we don't know.
We don't know.
The point is, we know nothing, Jon Snow.
Yes, we're in flux. Richard Madden was sitting right here.
Richard Madden was here today. It was so amazing.
Yeah, King of the North. Yes.
King of the North.
I don't know. You said Jon Snow, and then I was like, oh, his brother was here today.
He was, and he told me. I asked him if he was going to be in the flashbacks, and he was like, no, but if I was, I would have lied to you anyway.
As we end here, I'm going to apologize I was coughing. My phone kept ringing. This was just like an audio mess for me, this podcast. So I'm going to try to come back from my vacation rejuvenated. Or I will have died in Scotland. We'll see.
You will have seen Scotland.
Yes.
There was so much turbulence. I was coming back from France last year. Or this year, I don't remember. But
I could have France so much.
No, I don't. I had never been before in my life, and I was so excited. But I was coming back, and there was like crazy turbulence. But I was like, at least I saw Paris.
At least you saw Paris.
I got to die right now.
Yeah, there you go.
So there you go.
That's our.
If you don't see Eric again, he died a happy man. Like Leonard Nimoy.
Exactly. I dedicate this all to you, Jeff, not Emma. What an interesting full circle this podcast for that. Roth Cornett on Twitter. Eric IGN on Twitter. Send us emails, questions, comments, channelsurfing@ign.com. That's it for now. I will survive Scotland. We'll see.
Maybe.
Shakma?
Shakma.